This time last year, COSS and AstroNoir hosted an International Women's Day event with panelists from diverse sectors of the space industry, with the hopes to introduce students and staff from academia to industry professionals. We hope you enjoy this talk. Please like and subscribe for more.
Thank you everyone so much for coming to this, the COSS event for International Women's Day. We are uncharacteristically doing quite a practical event today. We're here to talk about the particular experiences of women working in the space industry with an eye to helping people who feel like they want to follow them into the space industry, to give advice to anyone who might want to enter that part of the world. So today we have our guests, Chaneil James, Christina MacLeod, Harriet Brettle and Anushka Sharma, all of whom are prominent members of the UK space industry, to talk to us about what it was like to get into the space industry for them. So I'm not going to go into too much detail, I'll let them introduce themselves, but I'm just going to do a little bit of housekeeping. First of all, this event is being recorded. Please follow us on social media. We'll be live tweeting the event for the people who can't be here. It will be at #COSS@AstroNoir. And just to lay out the structure of today's event, it will be a conversational panel between our visitors today, led by Chaneil, followed by a virtual drinks in which I will invite everyone to unmute themselves if they would like. I'll give you the option to do that at the end. You'll have to do it yourself though. Click the button to unmute. And if you want to raise any questions or any statements, then please do. If you wouldn't like to, I'll also be following the chat and I can relay any questions you might have to our guests. So I'll hand over to Chaneil. Thank you so much.
Hello and welcome to our International Women's Day panel hosted by UCL's COSS and AstroNoir, where we will be celebrating women who are students and professionals that are navigating through the space industry. I would firstly like to start with a short introduction of myself. Having studied in the Earth Sciences department at UCL, I rediscovered my passion for space as I learned about our Earth. Eventually, my final year Earth Sciences project was about the formation and characteristics of Mercury's core. When at UCL, I worked at organizations such as my time as the community coordinator for NASA FDL Europe, where one of our panelists, Anushka Sharma, was actually a colleague of mine, as well as places like CERN. My network grew when I joined the monthly drinks that were hosted by the London Space Network, co-founded by Anushka Sharma and another of our panelists, Harriet Brettle, as well as Mani Shah. Since, I have started a master's in astrophysics, particle physics and cosmology at the University of Barcelona. Recently, I have focused on science communications in order to engage all types of people into the STEM field. I have worked as a subject matter expert and for the NASA Space Apps hackathons, acted as the head of sponsorship for the Edinburgh Women in Space conference, which another of our panelists, Christina MacLeod, founded and chairs. I currently work as a freelance journalist for the Institute of Physics' Physics World magazine, making planetary systems approachable to a general audience. Finally, AstroNoir was founded for the purpose of making sure that STEM became a place for all, to address how it is often made inaccessible, but that with the correct approach can become fun for everyone to enjoy. Now that you have a general view of myself and how I met the wonderful women in our panel, I think it's time that you get to know them yourselves. Starting with Anushka, could you please describe your degree titles, profession, reason you got into the space field, and one woman that has inspired you throughout your career?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's an honor to be here, and thank you to everyone who's joining us today. Happy Women's Day, or happy International Women's Day to you all. So yes, I'm Anushka. I'm born and raised in London. I ended up falling into a computing degree. So I did computing information systems, and I graduated a long time ago, like coming up to, I think this is the 19th year. So it has been quite a journey. And in that time, my career has spanned lots of different iterations. It's much like having a portfolio career. And so I've always felt like I've never quite fit like the general trajectory of someone who either ends up in like a solo career path or just ends up in the space sector. I have made it work for myself because it's been like passion led for me, which is why Naaut was created. So I guess for me, my passion started as a child. I wanted to be an astronaut, and I think that's one of the most beautiful things that unites so many people all around the world, irrespective of whether you're a rocket engineer or, you know, a STEM graduate. Like, something about space and looking up at the night sky is something that genuinely unites us all. It was our navigation system, like, you know, hundreds of years ago. And just genuinely, it's just something that I think really grounds us. And that vision and looking up at the night sky is something that I feel very passionate about, and it's something that's quite an equalizer. I feel it's a view that everyone in the world has, hopefully. Low Earth orbiting satellites separately, like discussing that. And I guess the reason why I formally decided to follow a career in the space sector, my career actually, after doing my computing degree, I fell into politics. And then I left that after about 8 years to work on the Olympics. And then I really fell into the world of the London startup ecosystem. And I was looking after like tech startups and helping them scale here in Shoreditch. I'm in London right now. And I got chosen by NASA to attend something called a NASA Social, which was a kind of community-led initiative that brought passionate people that were using social media to be science communicators. And lo and behold, me, little old me in London, had to tell this tech startup in the middle of Shoreditch that I was going in January for 2 weeks for this NASA Social. And I got to see a rocket launch from California at the Vandenberg Air Force Base. And that was back in 2015. And it literally made me realize that all of the amazing people that I met that were also science communicators all came from different walks of life. Like, there was someone who was a producer in LA from The Bachelor. There was someone else who was working at Best Buy, so like consumer goods. And it really just made me realize that I had skills that the space sector needed. And that was my marketing and communications. And that initially was like the first step of me realizing that, you know, a few years on, that I really do sit at the intersection of like space, technology, and startups. And it's basically aligned with all my passions and experiences that over the last 19 odd years since graduating have kind of finally assembled. And I'm sure we'll come on to that a bit more. But I'd say that one woman who's inspired me throughout my career, I would say Helen Sharman, because I grew up, I'm an 80s kid, like seeing her be the first like British woman in space was so inspiring. I have since had the opportunity and privilege of bumping into her at an event, and she's just like, it was just so awesome because we never really could celebrate British astronauts. We always had American figures. There were obviously Indian, there was an Indian astronaut. And that was awesome because of my heritage. I'm of an Indian background. But really, Helen Sharman, and also our surnames were so similar. It's so silly, but it was something so little. But it was something that as a kid, like watching Blue Peter and seeing her come on air, it was like, oh my God, it's so close. Yeah, so props and big love to Helen Sharman always, because I think she's awesome.
She is awesome. Thank you, Nish. So next we'll go on to Christina. Can you please describe your degree titles, reason you got into the space industry, and one woman that has inspired you throughout your career?
Yeah, of course. Thank you. First of all, thank you so much for inviting me to speak tonight. I'm very excited to be on this wonderful panel with all these brilliant women. And yeah, so hello everyone. I'm Christina. If you can't tell from the kind of weird accent, I'm Canadian, but I've spent a lot of my life in Scotland. I'm back in Canada now, but I am currently an undergraduate student at the University of Edinburgh studying mechanical engineering. So I'm a little bit kind of early careers years. I'm excited to kind of speak a little bit more about that though. And for me, I'm also the founder and chair, as Chaneil said, of the Edinburgh Women in Space Conference. I'm also involved with the University of Edinburgh's rocketry team as sponsorship manager. Was also recently elected, as in yesterday, to an executive position at UK SEDS. So that's another thing I can kind of speak more about later on. And I'm also involved in a few other little groups, just promoting women in STEM and space and just space in general. And the reason I got into the space field, it's kind of been a long journey for me. I've always been so fascinated, I think, with like flight and just like exploring. And I was always like out just exploring new things. And I grew up in the middle of a forest where we had such a nice view of the night sky. And we used to go kind of sailing out on little boats at nighttime sometimes when I was growing up. And I remember looking up at the stars and being fascinated and wondering what's out there. And I thought it was just so inspiring and awesome. And I never actually really realized I could get into space. I thought it was reserved for like Americans or just really, really clever people who work at these major research institutes, just like helping advance the future of space. And so I think I really got into space because I went to this Equate Scotland networking event where I met some brilliant women, starting from young students who were doing internships to kind of more experienced professionals. And I thought, hey, if you're doing that, like, why don't I join you? And so this was fairly recent. It was only about 1.5 years ago. So I'm a fairly new addition to the space sector. And since then, I've kind of thrown myself in. Someone who's inspired me throughout my career, so many amazing women like across the space sector, but I think I'm going to go with Kate Gunderson. She is actually one of my friends who I met online on Instagram, and she's currently an engineer for NASA Johnson Space Center. She's a flight sciences officer as well for NASA, and she basically flies around the world hosting, like, kind of helping with airborne science missions, also kind of ferrying astronauts from location to location on the NASA Gulfstream aircraft. And she's incredible. She also runs a blog, Kate Gunderson blog or Caitlin Gunderson blog or something, and she posts about women in space, women in STEM, and just general awesome things. So yeah, I think there are role models everywhere, and I think it's really cool to kind of be in contact with direct contact with someone who's inspiring me. I always ping her messages, just commenting on her things. So yes, excited to be here.
That's actually really, really sweet, knowing that you met each other on social media and you have that relation. That's super cute. Thank you again for being here and also introducing yourself. We'll now finally move on to Harriet, which I'm sorry we gave you less time. Can you please explain to us your degree titles, why you got into the space industry, and one inspirational woman you admire?
Sure thing, Chaneil. Well, thank you so much for having me. Honestly, I'm really honoured to be on this panel with such fantastic speakers. It's really an honour. So I studied maths at the University of Warwick. I had always loved space as a kid, but didn't really realise it was something I could do as a career. And something that Christina said really resonated. You know, I kind of thought, well, that's for people who do engineering or want to be, you know, astronauts. And that never really kind of stuck with me. So I thought, well, okay, I'll keep space as a hobby. Maybe I'll do some stargazing, and I'll go get a real job, right? And so I spent a number of years working in finance, which was great at the time, but I realized that it wasn't something I was inherently passionate about, you know, and started to kind of look at ways that I could get more involved in the space community. So at the time, I just moved to New York. I was working at the Federal Reserve, and thought, okay, I'm moving to a new country. No one knows me here. I'm going to reinvent myself as someone who loves space, and I'm just going to kind of jump into everything that I can. So spent a lot of time at the Natural History Museum, going to their planetarium, which is amazing. Started getting involved with the Planetary Society, which is a global nonprofit that really tries to empower citizens to advance space exploration. And it was really through outreach and I guess public communication that I rediscovered this love of space. And so when I came back to the UK, I found a part-time program at Queen Mary, the University of London. So I could keep my job at the bank, but by night I could get on the Central Line, go on down to Bethnal Green and do my astronomy classes, which was awesome. And that really kind of gave me the confidence to say, okay, maybe this is something I can actually do. Maybe this is a real job. And so after a year of that, I told my boss at the bank, and I told my parents that I was leaving the wonderful world of finance to move to California and study planets. And that was a bit of a 180, but I've not looked back. So I spent a year in Pasadena studying Jupiter and its moons, which was extraordinary. But again, kind of realized, okay, I'm really enjoying this, but I want something that's a little bit more tangible. How do I bring this financial background I have together with this passion for planetary science and space sciences? And honestly, I got incredibly lucky. There was a job going at the company I'm now at, which is Astroscale. So we're a startup that's all about working for space sustainability. So how do we keep space clean and make sure that space is safe and sustainable for future generations? So I work in the business department. I'm the head of business analysis. And essentially what I'm doing is trying to work with how do we commercialize debris removal services? How do we incentivize operators to want to keep space clean? And that really brings in the financial background I had with this passion for space. And so somehow with hindsight, it looks like all of these things I've done up until this point made perfect sense. Obviously, it did not feel like that at the time, but it's been a fantastic journey. And then, yeah, so finally, one woman who has inspired me. I mean, I can't pick just one because there's so many women who are just incredibly inspirational, be it people who are leaders in the field that I look up to my peers, people on this panel. I hope it's not too cliche. I'm going to shout out to my mum, who did so much for me as a child, instilling an attitude of hard work, of drive, of passion, following what I wanted to do. And that has stood me in such good stead with navigating this non-traditional career path and being that pillar of support. So yeah, shout out to her.
Amazing. Honestly, all of your answers have tugged at my heartstrings. So thank you again for sharing that with us. Having an unconventional career path, I feel like we could all relate to that in some sort of sense. And yeah, it makes it, honestly, my career path, I don't think anyone fully understands it until they see it and they're like, oh wait, yeah, that kind of works if it, yeah. But thank you for sharing with us, and thank you for being here today. So the questions that I did just then are going to be different to how I'm going to do it now. This will be more of an open discussion, and if anyone has questions, please write in the chat box and Paddy will make sure that we get them at the end, or you could also wait for us to have the little drinks at the end so that we could just unmute everyone and go wild. Hopefully not too wild, but so firstly, do you think it was an easy transition going from your degree to industry?
I'm happy to kick this one off. Short answer, no, but I think that's just because I took a somewhat circuitous route. For me, I graduated with a maths degree, and all of the careers fairs that I went to were tailored towards maths grads who wanted to go into financial industry or into consulting or accountancy and all of these things. So I spent a lot of time in careers fairs seeing banks and the Big Four, and that kind of, I guess, kind of pigeonholed my view of what I could do as a maths graduate, which is really stupid looking back on it now. You know, there's a whole host of things you can do with a maths degree, but I had it in my head that, you know, I kind of turned myself off from these other career options because I didn't see as such of a clear path. And I think that's something where it's really valuable to get those outside experiences and learn from other people's careers and see other journeys to give that kind of confidence of, you know, I don't need to go into a grad scheme and then go and do this career and follow a very linear direction. There's a lot of very relevant experiences and skills that you can pick up and tailor to whatever you want to do. But it took me a little bit of time to figure that out and build up that confidence to forge my own path.
So I graduated in like 2002, and that was really at the time of like the dot-com like bubble bursting, like a few years later. And so at that time, a lot of people had been doing computing or IT degrees. So I was trying to then get a job in the IT and like sort of the tech sector that actually didn't exist until like 2012 in London. And so that's how I sort of fell into politics. I would say that my skill set of being like tech savvy, being able to code, all those things like were all really great skills to have as a generalist to get into any field that I wanted to. And I started off in telecoms, consulting on voice over IP telephony systems at a time where people were still using dial-up and modems and not yet even investing in ISDN, so faster cables for their internet. So I would say that I don't think that you have to have a linear path. You don't necessarily have to have a STEM degree or background. If you're passionate about the space sector, think of it as any other industry. If you feel passionate about like solving a problem in the space sector, make sure it's one that no one else is solving yet, right? There's so many people trying to repeat the same thing, but you can build your own pathway. And if you just look at everyone here on this panel and Chaneil as well, like we all represent that diversity across like the spectrum of like how we've made our own pathway. So it was a long journey for me. It took at least like 18 to 21 years, or yeah, 18 to 21 years. I say 21 years because I was 17 when I went to Cape Canaveral and had the opportunity to go there. So really as a childhood, like teenager, then eventually being able to like fulfill that dream by being chosen by NASA. So don't underestimate sometimes the time it can take for something to come to fruition, and don't let it get you down.
I love that message. Honestly, time does not mean anything when it comes to the fact that you're going to have a career until much further down the line. So at least navigate your way in which you enjoy the path that you've taken, you know? Christina, did you have something to say?
Yeah, so I feel like I can't quite comment probably as thoroughly, just because I'm still doing my undergraduate degree, but just in terms of going, I guess, from like the classroom to internships, I think there definitely is like a shift kind of it's quite different going from somewhere where everything's so rigorously structured to something where it can be quite open, just like in terms of the projects you're working on. But definitely I'd like to reiterate what I think both Nush and Harriet both said about transferable skills and just like kind of making use of your skills, because honestly, like if you, whether you have a part-time job or whether you volunteer for something like UKSEDS, you're gaining all these skills and improving like your interpersonal skills, which are super important. You're learning how to kind of ask for help when you need it, because I found that during my internships, I really had to learn to kind of check myself and be like, okay, I can't quite figure this out, and it's totally okay for me to go to a more senior engineer or someone else on the team who can help. So yeah, I think it's definitely a bit of a transition, but just make the use of your unique skills, and if you're passionate about something, then just go for it. Try to figure out what works for you.
Thank you for that advice. I'm definitely going to use it myself. So actually, this was going to be a later question, but Christina basically led us there. What skills do you guys think you brought from your degree to your career?
Many moons ago, when I did my degree, my dissertation was on consumer implementation and killer applications of 3G. And we're now currently on the brink of like consumer adoption of 5G in the very like near to mid-term. And it all just depends on like public perception and adoption of this technology amongst the kind of race that we've got in this like global, or like sort of global race that we have between the US and China and obviously Europe. So for me, one thing I've always been doing is horizon scanning and deep technology, and really looking at the implications and application of technology. And so having like studied that at uni, it was always something that, irrespective of working in politics or even the Olympics, it was something that I was always passionate about. And again, like just to tie in what Christina and Harriet are saying so beautifully, is that like when it comes from your passion and you kind of like, my pledge is to be a lifelong learner. So taking those skills and trying to like find the communities or find like the bubbles of people that are also interested in similar things that might be fringe to like the day job. There is such a thing about like people having a side hustle this day with a view to turn that into a business in the future. So think of it as kind of like a career side hustle of like, oh, I one day want to be in the space sector. What are the kind of things that I need to like learn about or immerse myself in? Who should I meet? Who are my peers? Where are they? How do we connect? And then somehow like the magic happens. But the beautiful thing about horizon scanning, which is like one of my core skills at Naaut, is joining the dots between technology, people, and networks. So that's something I've been doing for like the last 20 odd years of my career. And it's just so cool to see how people and organizations and networks of people are interacting as technology is now scaling across industries and sectors, and primarily focusing on like artificial intelligence and machine learning in the space sector. So that's been super cool. Like horizon scanning is mine.
Yeah, that sounds incredible. I think it's so cool when you can kind of like use something that you learned at university to kind of see you through your whole career. I think that's really awesome. Kind of like for me, I guess I'm still very much a student. I think one of the things that I've learned during my engineering degree is how to quickly learn, kind of synthesize, and then make use of new information that's coming in. I've been in lots of different kind of volunteering roles and lots of different internship experiences. And I think through each of them, I've had to quickly learn how to do new things. And so I definitely think just like that ability to land on my feet, because engineering, as I'm sure you can all guess, it's quite a difficult slog of fluid mechanics and thermodynamics and all these different difficult kind of things that didn't originally come naturally to me. I've struggled a lot with kind of some of those subjects, but I've really learned how to quickly learn that new information and kind of make use of it. And I think that's very useful, just regardless of where you end up in the space sector or wherever you end up, regardless.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe to just add on what Christina said, that last bit really hit a tone with me, because I remember with my maths degree, I struggled. I felt like the dumbest person, and it took me a long time to really understand the stuff. You know, maths is hard, right? Like I know we all know this, but yeah, I struggled, and then I got to the end of my degree and was like, okay, well, if I can crack maths, I can probably crack a fair few things. How hard can the rest of it be? That thing that I got from studying maths was really being able to think about problems in an incredibly logical way and work through solutions to the end, if that makes sense. And so I apply that method to everything that I do. What is the problem? How am I going to solve it? Execute, make it happen. And so it was more the process. It wasn't any of the facts I learned or any of the theorems. It was more the method of, how do you solve problems and how do you work with other people to get to the right answer?
Yes, I agree with all of you. I also went through a different path and I struggled when I first started university, and this really affected my grades. I learned how to learn, essentially. I learned how I learn well. I'm going to lead on to my next question, actually. Do you believe that university grades strongly impact the chances of entering the space sector? Additionally, what advice would you give to those taking routes such as a temporary break from education or going back to a different degree?
So in terms of university grades, I think, yes, it's important to kind of work towards a goal you want to do as well as you can, but sometimes that's not possible. I know for me, the first few years of my degree were such a struggle, and I actually had to take a year out. I had a concussion in high school, and that kind of followed through into my university years, and I still kind of feel like I'm trying to catch up on everything constantly. But I think it's really important to kind of know yourself and recognize when you need a break from something and when you're just like feeling kind of low and like you can't really continue or something. It's totally okay to take a step back. And for me, I just needed a year out to kind of sort myself out, kind of get back on my feet. And that's actually, during that time, that's kind of when I found the space sector, and I started researching all these really cool people, and I was like, whoa, they're all doing amazing things. And I read some kind of other stories about people who have struggled and they've still ended up with leading roles in the sector. And I was like, you know what, this space sector sounds really cool. And I think if you are taking a year out, feel free to explore whatever interests you. Just like if there's anything you've ever wanted to do, just go and try to do it. Try to meet new people. I think networking is such an important kind of aspect of anything, and I think we're going to touch on that later. University grades are important, do as well as you can, but if you're going through a rough patch, I can assure you there are so many more people than you think who are also going through that similar rough patch. And as long as you just push through, be resilient, keep your head down, and make sure that you're doing what's right for you. That's kind of the way to go.
Thank you.
I have to say, my heart goes out to anybody who's in their first year of uni, their second year, third year, whatever year you're in right now, especially during this global pandemic. This is probably arguably the hardest time to be a student studying at university, whether it's in situ, whether you're remote currently, whether you're in between, being back at halls or maybe transitioning for exams. It's really hard. So I know that I can see how in the sort of outside of the academic circles, so many people are now really truly thinking about the return on investment on the fees that you're paying and the experience you're having. And a lot of it comes down to the universities and how they're now going to tackle that situation. But let me tell you, you are doing a great job. And like Christina said, don't be hard on yourself. This is a hard time for everyone. I'm self-employed. It's a hard time for me. A lot of my work last year got literally scrubbed. I literally had a full calendar of work ahead of me. Harriet and I had a whole calendar of events planned with the London Space Network with our co-founder Manny, and it all got written away literally in March last year. So a year on, I've had to pivot and I've had to adjust and really think about other skill sets that I have, and that has got me through it. But I would say everyone in this world is going through something. They may not be going through exactly the same thing that you are right now, but we're all working through it together. And so however you come out of this experience at university, it is all meant to be. So I can't say much more than that. But also I got a second class degree, and as an Indian girl, the shame I held for that was ridiculous. In my family, unless you got a first or a 2-1, it didn't count. And I really wish I'd been kinder to myself and really not given myself this shame that I carried of feeling like I'd failed when I actually achieved quite a lot. I was one of only 5 girls on my computing class, and this was 19 years ago. And from what I can see, the numbers really haven't changed that much over the last decades or 2 decades or so. So there is still so much work to do, and you guys are the future, as well as my fellow panelists. So.
Yeah, maybe just to add to that, in terms of the degree, I'd say it's just one piece of the puzzle, right? It is not the be all and end all. And certainly when I've been hiring, whether it's interns or people to join at Astroscale or hiring volunteers through the Space Generation Advisory Council, obviously a degree is important, but it's those other things that really set someone apart. So, have you been involved in a volunteer organization? Do you have, a part-time job where you can demonstrate skills? Do you have, work experience that you can speak to? I think all of those other things really can bring your background to life more than just one number on a degree, and show your passion and enthusiasm, which, to be honest, I think is much, much more valuable. I'd much rather hire someone with a 2-2 who had the spirit and the energy and the drive than someone who had a first and that was it. So you've got to kind of think about the bigger picture there for sure.
That definitely puts things into perspective for me, as my first 2 years were not the best. But let's move on to our next question, which is discussing intersectionality. How do you think that intersectionality plays a large role in how easy it is to climb up the space sector ladder?
So for me, first of all, in the most recent history of our space collective history as humans, watching the Perseverance landing on Mars was epic. And the reason it was because of the amazing engineer and scientist, Dr. Swati Mohan, who was front and center, and she was rocking her mask and she was adorning her forehead with a bindi. And I cannot tell you what that image meant to me and my family and my nieces. And it literally gives me goosebumps as I think about it now, seeing someone who maybe represents a part of you or a piece of you, or underrepresented or minority community, or even gender, is so important. And I think one of the things that we struggle with in the space sector is that a lot of the generation that have achieved what they have thus far represent a very undiverse representation of our society. And this is global. But the great thing is the organizations like UKSEDS and SGAC that Harriet and Christina represent themselves, and I'm sure they can tell you more about that, is they represent the energy of the youth that is building a peer-to-peer network, which as I am so excited about seeing how that will now transform over the short to mid and long term, as now our technological collaborative and the partnerships that we're building for the space sector are now moving forward as we're scaling as with a kind of public-private space sector here in the UK, as well as in the US and obviously all around the world. India has an awesome space agency called ISRO, and they've done really great missions to Mars and to the moon. And there's some great films, and I can give you some recommendations, but Mishal Mangalyaan is one of them, and it tells a story about the female scientist that read behind the Mars mission a couple of years ago. So that's really inspiring. Honestly, the work I do at Naaut is all about fostering this collaborative value system to build partnerships, and again, across people, networks, and organizations, to really scale and bring together the technology and innovation and strategy we need. Because guess what? I want my friends who grew up in a council estate around the corner here in Tooting to know that they could equally access a career in the space sector, irrespective of whether they had that STEM background or not, because they're an awesome designer or they're curating the most beautiful musical playlists that could be the music that we listen to on those suborbital flights that all of the awesome companies are now looking to start launching in the next few years. So it's a really exciting time. And if you're a scientist doing a scientific degree, think about the other things that you might have in your in your passion, in your life, in your hobbies, like Harriet mentioned. And it could be music, and it might be something that you bring into what you're doing now. And think about the collaborations within what you love and the passions that you have, because you can probably hear that I come alive when I talk. There's a reason for it, and it's because I love what I do. But it's taken me genuinely 19 years to get to this I call it flow state. But there are always up and downs that come along the way too. That is the entrepreneurial journey. But the beautiful thing about this is that when you are building collaborative models and bringing communities together like we do with the London Space Network, it genuinely comes from such a place of cool energy. The universe almost matches the energy that you give out. And so that's why it's such an honor to be on the panel with some awesome women tonight. especially on International Women's Day, because I feel like it's so important to have the platform, and it's so nice. I'm going to stum because I really want to hear from Christina and Harriet as well.
No, don't stumnish. That was awesome. I was just going to say you covered it, right? Answer done. Honestly, that was brilliant. And I wanted to go back to something you said earlier, because there was something you said about Helen Sharman, and it really touched on what you were talking about in terms of representation, because you found that link to her, that your names were similar, right? And that's, like, no offense to you, Nush, it's a somewhat tenuous link, but even that really resonated with you as growing up, right? Yeah. And you think how powerful a more direct representation or connection can be for someone to see that's someone who's like me, who is making waves in the space industry. That's someone who can inspire me, and I can go towards, So yeah, that link you mentioned before, and then the representation with the Mars mission just recently kind of really kind of hit me just then.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my gosh, I don't know how to follow up from that. You guys really just nailed that, though. I think representation is also very important. I think, yeah, each of us have kind of been speaking about that. But I think with Edinburgh Women in Space, that kind of was born out of wanting to increase representation, wanting people to see more visible role models and people who looked like them. And we have such a diverse committee. Like, it's so great. People from from around the world. I think Chaneil can probably speak to that as well. We're all kind of in different time zones and trying to coordinate everything. It's incredible. And then also our speakers are from around the world. I mean, we mainly kept them UK based just because we wanted to show off opportunities within the country. It's incredible to see that. And it's important to me as well, because I don't think I would have really gotten into the space sector had I not gone along to that networking, Women in Space networking event in, I think it was October 2019. And that's where I really saw people who kind of looked like me or were like just ahead of where I currently was, like who were young professionals. That is really important. And it's also worth noting that I think the industry is slowly changing. I think Nush kind of said this. There was a very small group of people who originally engaged with the space sector. And the other week I was actually asked, how can we make like space more inclusive for more voices? How do we draw more voices by someone who's more established in the space sector? They're like a member of the Scottish Space Leadership Council's committee. And so they were asking like new voices of space, a small team that's just been created. How can we draw more people into space? And I think just opening up the conversation is so important. Showing these fabulous role models, such as these amazing women on this panel, as well as lots of other people, is very, very important. Hopefully see a brighter future ahead for everyone.
Thank you, guys. I, at some point, lived on a council estate area. We owned the house, but we were like in that area. Whenever I mentioned the fact that I was interested in space, it did seem like that was meant for someone else. Like, that didn't even seem like it was for someone that looked like me. And I think it's very, very lovely, Nush, especially you saying that people from council estates being able to know that they can, that is an industry for them. We now know that it's possible. It's not just cut off, it's for everyone. And thank you guys for expressing that. So, next question. What do you think of the current situation with unpaid internships? And do you know of any opportunities, paid or unpaid, for students interested in the space field?
Yeah, so we pay our interns. I think that's very important. I think if you're going to be hiring someone to do a job at a company that is making money, you should be paying your interns to do that, right? I think unpaid internships set a very dangerous precedent in terms of allowing people who can afford to take 3 months out of their summer and do something for free. It does not give you equal opportunities across the board, right? And so some of the paid opportunities that do exist, I want to give an explicit shout out to the UK Space Agency's SPIN program. So that's Space Placements in Industry. I think I'm very rubbish at remembering what acronyms stand for. It's something like that, maybe student placements or but anyway, check it out. Go on, if you Google Spin Catapult, that should get you to where you need to be. But they are funded internships that are hosted at a whole host of different companies across the UK in a range of different fields, right? So last year we had a business analyst who joined Astroscale through that Spin program. A lot of them are science and engineering focused, but there's a real, I think they do 30 to 50 internships or something like that through that program. So it's really, really extraordinary opportunity to get that experience and build up your resume.
I agree completely with Harriet. I think it's really important to pay your interns. They are doing work for companies. I mean, I guess I am speaking as a student, so of course it's good to be paid and stuff for my time. I've heard of unpaid internships. Just my sisters, they both kind of work in like fashion and design. If you want to make it in this sector, you really have to prove yourself by doing these unpaid internships. And I was like, hang on, like that's not very fair, because people are like putting their blood, sweat and tears kind of into their work, and they've spent money on their education. And I think it's really important to pay interns, and I'm glad Harriet mentioned Astroscale is doing an awesome job paying their interns. Thank you, Harriet. And as well as Spin, I think all the Spin placements are also paid. Another resource for both paid and kind of volunteer roles is UK SEDS. So UK SEDS, I realized I didn't say what it stood for, is UK Students for the Exploration and Development of Space. Whole database of like countless opportunities around the UK, as well as some in Europe. There's sometimes also some in like North America as well. You can find all sorts of things there for people from various backgrounds. And I've had people kind of reach out to me asking, oh, like I'm from a geology background, how do I get involved in like space mining? And just through kind of searching through the UK SEDS database and individuals who have kind of popped up on our UK SEDS interviews, we feature a range of interviews. I've kind of been able to put these people in contact with individuals who are in a similar area, which kind of, I guess, leads on to networking, which I think we're going to touch on in a few minutes. I think UK SEDS, it's called the spacecareers.uk. I don't think I said that, but that is a great resource for all kind of students or young professionals kind of looking for internships or early years jobs. There's also one in the US called Space Interns that was just launched. They have a similar idea to Space Careers UK. So that's another, if you're US based or looking for opportunities there, check that out. And I think they just launched like an international database, because I know there's some problems with ITAR restrictions if you want to work in the US, but their Space Interns is kind of working on that as well. So that's really awesome to see the space sector open up for more people.
I would just add, like, I completely agree with all of you. I don't believe that any intern should not be paid because you are working within an organization. And I know that in tech startups in the UK, it's actually illegal not to pay interns. I'm not sure how that necessarily transfers across. I'd also look at apprenticeships if you're more hands-on, if you're in the engineering field, perhaps, to consider that. Again, I'm not sure if they're paid, but it is training, so you've got to work it out. But we have to think about the social economic mobility of young people or people that are just coming out of university. And it's really important that you start to ask how to negotiate that salary in the future. It's something I learned very late in life, and now I'm self-employed. Like, it's ridiculous. Like, the conversations I have, like, you know, if someone will give me a number, I'll double it or triple it, right? Or when I'm pitching for business. And again, that's something, maybe another conversation a different day. And the other one that might surprise you is NASA actually has space for international interns. And I was told this by Douglas Terrier when he spoke at a Warwick University event at the Shard a year or so ago. And he actually, even me as a grown adult in my, at that time, late 30s, told me to apply for an internship. So irrespective of your age, if you are looking to make a career change into a sector, it's definitely worth considering those options. And also put yourself out there. And as Christina said, we're going to talk more about networking. So there's some really cool ways to get involved with the sector and kind of make some opportunities for yourself. So yeah, back to you, Chaneil.
Thank you, guys. Going on from that, actually, this is how Nush and I actually know each other, is the fact that in my second year of university, I went to a networking event, met this amazing chap called James Parr, and he offered me a job. We ended up having a discussion, and, well, it was more of, hey, do you have an internship? And he was like, yeah, sure. And he didn't end up giving me an internship. He ended up giving me an actual job. And I ended up working with Nush. We both worked for NASA, FDL Europe together. And then it went on from there. I then ended up towards the, like, around the middle of me working for NASA FDL. I went with a few of my colleagues to our colleague Nush's event for London Space Network. And then
Harriet and Manny, my wonderful co-founders.
Exactly.
It takes a team.
Went because of Nush, and then I ended up meeting amazing Harriet and also Manny. And basically, the networking helped so much, especially when I was feeling a bit bad at the university, like the long days. and then after the long day, go in to sit down, drink some wine with some space people, and getting to know other people that are interested in the same thing. So, leading on to the question, how has networking affected your career? Furthermore, how else can one expand their network? And do you think finding a mentor is important?
I think I've said this so many times, like networking has definitely kind of inspired me, and that's really what pushed me into a space career. Just finding this amazing network of individuals in the space sector who are like, everyone's really keen for you to get involved. I've messaged lots of people asking for their advice. Oh, would you like mind sharing your advice, or I'd love to connect with you, and everyone's so enthusiastic. And so I think networking has definitely had a huge impact on kind of my career path to date. In terms of expanding your network, I'm very, very shy normally. And I just remember like when I was starting out in the space sector, I was like, I really want to like get to know these people. Like I want to kind of reach out to them, such as the women I mentioned earlier, Kate Gunderson. I was like, she's really cool. I'd seen her on Instagram. And I just suddenly thought, I was like, you know what? Like, I'm just going to be brave and send a message. And I think just like, if like a message goes a long way, and a lot more people will respond than you think. And you never know, you might end up like striking up a friendship. You might find some new opportunities. If you're trying to like kind of establish that network, just like maybe try to set up your own group yourself. I mean, with Edinburgh Women in Space, it kind of started out because I was like, oh, I want more of a network of women in Scotland in space, and it's kind of expanded from there. But that's kind of how it started. And I think just like create your own opportunities, reach out to people, try and like interview people. I know so many people who were like spent basically lockdown kind of interviewing people, speaking to new people. I think it's incredibly important for us to kind of learn new things, gain new experiences, perhaps like open some new doors for us, and also just to make a friend. I think mentors are super important. It's great to have that guidance, and I think I wouldn't necessarily say I have one mentor. I get like inspiration from lots of different people, and I think it's really cool to kind of have this broad network, look at someone and say, oh, I really like your kind of entrepreneurial spirit. How can I almost emulate that and make it my own? So I think mentors are really important. Networks so important. Definitely get out there, just speak to people, and don't be afraid of sending a message. I know if I ever receive messages from people asking, oh, can I have some advice for something or whatnot, I'm so happy to point them in the right direction of incredible individuals. So networking is so important, especially in the space sector.
I think that's so interesting what you just said, especially for the fact that Nush and I, we obviously had a colleague relationship, friendship, and then we didn't really say anything in particular. We didn't officially say it. But at some point, Nush became my mentor. At some point, Nush just randomly was like, yes, I'm your mentor. And I was like, yeah, you're my mentor. So we've had that relationship ever since. And what I love about it, as you were saying as well, was the fact that it hasn't been a relationship where I just go to Nush and just ask, like, can you give me lots of information? It's kind of a two-way street where a few years ago, Nush got me an experience of being a VIP chaperone for the COSS events. And that was an experience that Nush gave me. And then later on, literally a few months ago, I also was able to get Nush to be a subject matter expert for NASA Space Apps. And we both worked on quite a few projects together, actually. Yeah. And I think it's beautiful how those relationships can form and shape your career, you know?
And just to echo on what you're saying there, I genuinely think that it's all about building relationships and having mutual respect, but obviously a lot of things align. And when things and values align, then it's really easy for those things to come about. And like, seriously, props to Chaneil for like everything you've done for me, because it is a two-way street. And I think that is something you should also think about when you're looking for a mentor, is what can you help them with and what can they help you with? And also, it's okay to say no to a mentor, or finding that you don't quite match with someone and looking for the other person. And something that Christina said about having more than just one person, I have something called like a board of mentors. And so there are different people that I go to for different things across the tech space and innovation ecosystems. But that also has taken such a long time for me to like find those peers, and actually they're peers, because I remember always gunning for people like Gary Vaynerchuk and like Gary V on Twitter. If you don't follow him, he's this like prolific entrepreneur. He used to come across as like a shouty, angry American man, but honestly, this man has got so much empathy, it's ridiculous. And I actually ended up meeting Gary at an event. We had him speak at an event in Liverpool. I bumped into him and his team at VaynerMedia in London a couple of times. But it's so funny because my ego at the time of like connecting with him was like, I'm an equal. Like, we're equal. Like, we're connecting. And like, he followed me back on something and we connected on LinkedIn. But honestly, that doesn't mean anything until you've built the experience or like have the story to tell of the journey that you've been on. There's a lot of mutual respect between us. But I feel like for me, like one of the things that when Harriet, Manny and I met and we discussed like in, I think it was December 2018, that we wanted to form the London Space Network, it genuinely came from this frustration that we'd meet each other at international conferences at a time when we could obviously travel, but we wouldn't see each other in our own hometown or like local vicinity of like being in London. And that was incredibly frustrating because we wanted to like figure out how to strengthen like the space professional network in London in our like local space. And I can see people like Kieran in the chat. So, you know, there's members of the LSN here. Thank you for joining us. It really helped us because the three of us all had different experiences and different backgrounds across the space ecosystem. And us reaching out to our relative and respective networks brought this amazing event in January 2019 of like 80 people plus. And we didn't take very long to like market it. And we've since obviously had and built relationships with like industry sponsors. And for me, and Harriet can also add as well, but it was really important to have like events where like maybe drinks and nibbles were sponsored, because I've been to those events where I haven't had the money to put on my travel card to get to the event, or I've had the money to put on my travel card, got to the event to network, put that badge on, and then I'm drinking water or Diet Coke. Like, you know, so I really wanted to think about the experience of like different people across the different aspects of the space ecosystem, whether you're a student, whether you're a professional, whether you're someone who's thinking about transitioning into the sector, because I wanted it to be an experience that everyone was welcome to, and everyone got stuck in. We had Sharpies and labels, everyone just wrote their name down and just got talking. Networking is really important. The one thing I would say with LinkedIn, if you're connecting with someone and you don't know them, tell them why you're connecting with them in a message when you send that request. It is the most powerful thing you can do.
I just want to pick up very quickly on what you just said, Nush, because yeah, it's so true, right? You get a random LinkedIn request from someone, and if there's no context, it's very hard to know, you know, why that person wants to talk to you. You know, sometimes I get messages from someone on LinkedIn who might say, oh, you know, your background's interesting, or I'm keen to learn more about where you're working right now, or it can be that simple, but just something very, very short that kind of gives a bit of context means that you're much more likely to, you know, to open up that connection and start linking in. Nush, you've made me really nostalgic about the London Space Network, because obviously with COVID, it's been, I think the last in-person event we were able to do might have been February last year. I don't think we did have an event last March. So it's been a year without that. But honestly, I can't wait for when it is safe for us to do so. Hopefully in the end of the summer or the autumn, we'll be able to bring that back. And that was for us, as Nush was saying, you know, we really wanted to provide a really informal space for people in the space community to come together over a drink and just have a chat. And that was it. You know, we kept it real bare bones simple, but it was amazing to see the interest and the diversity of people that we had coming through, you know, people from working in the space industry, people who wanted to get into the space industry, students, people who were experienced. And it's really those kind of mixing of different groups where you really add the value. I wanted to just add on one personal experience in terms of the value of networking, which was how I got my job at Astroscale, because I first met a now colleague of mine at Astroscale at a networking event at a conference. And at the time I spoke to him, I wasn't interested in his current job at Astroscale. I was interested in his previous job at NASA doing, you know, policy partnerships. And we had a great chat about, you know, what he'd been doing previously. All sounded very interesting. And again, exactly what we were just talking about. I sent him a message on LinkedIn saying, really enjoyed talking to you. Hope we can keep in touch. That was it for a year, until it came to discovering this opportunity at Astroscale. And because I'd made that connection a year ago, and because I'd referenced where we had met, that helped me get my foot in the door. So I reached out to him again and said, hey, I've seen this job opportunity. It sounds interesting. Can we talk about it? And we were able to reconnect at a conference later on. And ultimately, I was able to get the job. And so the thing I've got from that is, when it comes to networking, you never know what's going to come out of it. The thing I try and take from networking is whoever I'm speaking to, there's something I can learn from them. That might just be learning about their job, which could be incredibly interesting. And chances are, if you're speaking to someone in space, it's probably going to be interesting. Or it could be a job opportunity that comes, 2-3 years down the line. You never know what's going to come out of that. So going in with an open attitude of just wanting to learn and connect and build those relationships, like Nush was saying, is really, really powerful.
Thank you, guys. It's actually quite extraordinary how all of us have met each other, maybe through networking. So networking works, guys. If you're watching, it works. I would like to go on to the next section, which discusses societies. So are there any societies that students can join, and do any of them have fee waivers?
I haven't talked about my favourite organisation, which is the Space Generation Advisory Council. So disclaimer, I'm the co-chair of this organisation, but it's fantastic. So this is a group for students and young professionals internationally. So we have 15,000 members and alumni across 150 countries, all working together to connect and empower students and young professionals across the space industry. So we do that through hosting events on a national, regional and local level. We have 10 project groups that are all working across the world. So we have members from all over coming together to work on topics from space exploration to space law and policy to commercial space sector. We have a mentorship program. We have a whole host of things that I'm going to completely forget. Go check out the website. I'll put it in the chat. But it's free to join. Anyone can join. And the other thing is, professional development opportunities and scholarships. So we provide scholarship to attend not just our own events, but also other events as well. For me, SGAC was an absolute game changer. It allowed me to build up experience in the space sector while I was still working in a bank, which really was one of the things that helped me get into the industry in the first place. I was awarded a scholarship to attend an event in Colorado, which is where I met my current colleague that got me the job at Astroscale. So all these things kind of fit together. Getting involved in these events, I'm sure Christina can talk about UK SEDS and other things as well. It is a really great way to build that experience and meet, inspiring leaders, but also inspiring peers who can you can join your journeys together.
Yeah, definitely happy to kind of jump in there and speak about UK SEDS. Also, I am a recent member of the Space Generation Advisory Council, so hopefully I will be getting involved in some stuff in the future. But yes, UK SEDS, huge advocate. UK SEDS is basically the UK's National Student Space Society, provides resources, runs events, teaches kind of students and young professionals lots of skills through the space sector. There are lots of different teams. We have the careers team who runs Space Careers UK, which is the site I was talking about earlier. We have marketing teams, outreach teams, a whole host of different kind of opportunities there. And I think it's great to kind of get involved in whether like outreach careers teams or just like general marketing. You kind of get involved with the industry. You're put in contact with so many different individuals, your peers, people working in government, industry, academia, and it's just a great way to expand your network, learn new skills, and also just contribute to something that's bigger than just yourself. So I think UK SEDS is amazing. It changed my life. It's really given me the confidence to just go out into the space world and, just forge my own path. I would definitely recommend. And it's also free to join. Important point there. Totally free to join, and every year there's the National Student Space Conference, great event to kind of expand your network. Some other quick places, Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics, they're based in the US and they basically have branches mainly in the US, but they've started expanding internationally. They have a great network of really supportive women there, as well as the Royal Aeronautical Society. I'm a member of that. They have this huge mentoring scheme that they've recently launched, and they run lots of events just covering the global kind of aerospace sectors, and both WOA, Women of Aeronautics and Astronautics, and the Royal Aeronautical Society are both free for students. So yeah, definitely check out UK SEDS as well as the Royal Aeronautical Society and WOA.
Amazing. And then so we'll lead into our final question, from me at least, today. How does academia and industry collaborate, and how can this be improved?
I'm happy to take that one. So as Chaneil said, we met at an accelerator program called Frontier Development Lab. It's run in partnership with the European Space Agency here in Europe, and it's run in partnership with NASA and SETI, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence in California, in America. And what it does, it's an accelerator program that puts artificial intelligence and machine learning scientists or research graduates in partnership with space scientists to solve mission-led AI and machine learning technological solutions for specific sectors. So it could be for helioscience, or it could be the challenges of going back to the moon, or it could be astronaut health, all of which have been some of the programs in past FDL accelerator programs. And what was so cool about working on that project is it really did bring the entrepreneurial mindset to science graduates and scientists, I should say, science-minded people, to come up with solutions that would be adopted by either agency with money later on to help commercialize it, but equally just also give an opportunity and platform for those scientists to then speak at NIPS, which is I can't remember the acronym, I'll get it. It's a machine learning conference that's for students all around the world. It's the biggest known kind of conference in Canada, held in Montreal every year, normally in like December, as well as other kind of like platforms. But I personally still feel that we're missing a trick. And this is kind of where Naaut comes in, because there is a space that sits in the messy and fuzzy, undefined place between academia and science and industry. And I say that because this ecosystem is currently evolving. All of the solutions of the awesome startups and space companies and space agencies like the European Space Agency, the Indian Space Research Organization, European Space Agency. Let's take Astroscale. That might be a bit cheeky because Harriet's in on the conversation, but they're a space debris solutions provider. Within that ecosystem, there are going to be other players that need to be involved in the chain to help them execute what they have to do that's external to the specific role that organization provides. That sticky, messy place that kind of like joins the connections between all these people is really the work that I've been doing with Naaut. And that's where the horizon scanning, the kind of connecting comes along, because I can see where those gaps are. And often the work that I did at the Frontier Development Lab was really building the relationships with the earth scientists, planetary scientists, AI and machine learning experts from the work I'd done in the AI sector, to help them to peer review and assess the outcomes of the accelerator to ensure that it was industry-led, which actually fed back to the space agencies to allow them to understand where the money and the strategic innovation direction could go forward. It's really hard to explain, and I hope that kind of like articulates a little bit of the kind of work I do, because it's really hard when you're, first of all, I'm self-employed and I'm a solopreneur, so it's just me. And so I don't necessarily benefit from having an organizational structure apart from the organizations that I'm acting with as a consultant. I become in-house as part of their team as a consultant to get their aims and objectives done over a set period of time. I do feel that there is still a lot of this fuzzy, sticky grey space of solutions that we still need to find, but this will all scale as the space sector grows and the missions and launches continue. However, I will say this. I'm a huge champion of technology, finding those solutions that help us get to the moon, onto Mars, onto the moons of like Saturn and Jupiter. But what I really want us to do is really solve the problems closer to home and really think about our planet. It's so beautiful what space science can do in helping us have this mission control of planet Earth, right? It's a term that James Chaneil will know from Frontier Development Lab uses quite a lot. We have all this Earth observation data. In live time, we're able to build up a picture to understand our own planet. And obviously with the recent Perseverance landing on the surface of Mars, we're now going to understand what's happened on Mars and was there potentially life. But what we still don't know is if Mars is going to be our future or is our past. So there is still so much to uncover. So the opportunities are there. There's lots of challenges to go through, but we're working through them with academia and industry and people like me and the startups and organizations that are represented on this call.
Thank you, Nish. Harriet, do you have something to say about academia and industry collaboration?
Yeah, so from my perspective, the collaboration between industry and academia is so important, and it is that magic place in the middle that I absolutely love, because that's where you get real innovation, is bringing different perspectives together. A couple of examples of Astroscale. So we work with a number of academic partners. So we've been working with the University of Southampton to better understand the risk that satellites face in orbit and the benefit of debris removal strategies. We're also working with the University of Northumbria to look at more of the space policy and regulation side of debris removal, and what can we learn from other industries that are already decommissioning their assets and returning the environment back to its natural state. So how can we use those policies and regulations from, say, the nuclear industry or the oil and gas sector and bring that knowledge to space? There's a whole host of ways that industry and academia can work together, which is really, really exciting to see. One very quick link, and I'll post it in the chat as well, is the Sprint program. So this is a dedicated funding body to support academics partnering with SMEs, so small startups and medium-sized companies, to really make the most of that early stage research that you get from academia, but apply it in a real industry setting with small companies to see that innovation come through.
That's really, really good. Christina, because actually you would have a different type of perspective because you are coming from current academia point of view. Have you seen any type of collaboration with your university, for instance? What other collaboration do you think you've experienced, or do you think should be experienced? That was the worst way of saying it, but there you go.
No, it's all good. Totally get what you meant there. Yeah, I think Nush and Harriet have done a brilliant job of providing a huge overview of exactly how academia and industry can work together. I don't really have too much to say about it aside from like my own experience. I know that our university is like open to more industrial partners, especially kind of in the space area. And we're getting more involved, especially the student groups who are doing projects such as the rocketry team, or we have like a Hyperloop team, and they're bringing in industrial partners to work with them. It's definitely changing. The more perspectives and views you have from different people within industry and academia, the better, because I don't think there's any use having information stay in academia. There's so much innovation going on there, but definitely the more collaboration, the better. And I know that the Scottish Space Leadership Council, they're definitely trying to connect academia and industry. You know, there are like various projects that are going out. There's a sustainability project that was recently announced, and I'm not sure if that's closing, but they're looking for ideas from both industry and academia, and I think it's really great to see more collaboration, and hopefully we will see more of it in the future.
Thank you, all three of you, so much for joining us with this panel, and thank you all for listening. I think now we're going to go on to our drinks element, where we will open up to everyone being able to speak, and I think Paddy will actually explain it much better than I am right now.
I'm not so sure about that, but I will do my best. If anyone has any questions or comments about what has been said so far, feel free to say it if you would like. I would direct people towards the raise hand emotes, just so that we can keep some semblance of order. And of course, grab a drink if you have one. Thank you so much, everyone. This has been a fascinating talk. I loved to hear all about it. I really liked particularly the last question. As an aspiring academic, I'm very interested in the overlap between industry and academia. And as someone who's very interested in space and has spoken to a couple of people who are interested in going into the space industry, I'm interested particularly on what can be done at our end to bridge that gap. I believe most of you are people who've been through the British university system. I was wondering if you could expand more on whether you feel that you were prepared by that system and what more can be done on our end to prepare people to enter the space industry.
I find that UCL was very good with the networking events in order to try and get us into industry, for us to get to know about industry at least, in order to improve the collaborative spirit, potentially go into industry, going as like a whole class to London Space Network, or going as the whole class to the ESA office in the UK. I think maybe just making it more physically, right now it's quite difficult because COVID, but physically being able to go and see what industry looks like and getting to speak to the people so that you're not as intimidated about it. But everyone else can chime in as well.
Yeah, I've actually been doing a lot of talks to universities over the last couple of over the past year, and speaking of my sort of like career path. And I think really inviting people from the space ecosystem to come and address your class. I've also attended a really cool conference at UCL that was like a space conference. I think it was about 2 years ago, and it was super cool. I think I was probably one of the only outside attendees apart from the external speakers that were there. It was great to hear about like the Centre for Outer Space there, and also the work that you guys were doing. So I think it's just as important for the academic leaders in your institutions to be able to share the cutting edge work that you're doing and the research led ways that you're doing it. Because for people like me that are trying to figure out where everything is connected, for something that I need in 5 years' time, if I've had a conversation or heard about it at a lecture, at an event, at a conference, I think it works both ways. So get yourselves out there to commercial events and get on the platform to tell the story of your technology, of your research in not necessarily a technical way, but in a way that kind of like commands like the outside world application, so that people like me can kind of like connect the dots and do the kind of like innovation strategy thing of like knowing that you're someone that we can come to if I've got a client that needs your expertise, and then you get paid for that. So there's different ways to approach it, I think.
It's a two-way street, right? So, one thing is if you're at an academic institution, inviting people from industry to speak and to get that context of, what people in industry are doing and try and find those gaps. So as Nush said, I've spoken at a couple of universities, either at the, student societies or to research groups to kind of talk about what collaborations there might be. And then on the other side is, so one example is we have the Harwell Space Campus in the UK, which is just outside of Oxford. We have over 100 space companies all in the same place. Obviously now is not the time to go visit. There's not very many people there. But pre-lockdown, we hosted a number of different kind of student groups who would come for a day trip, and they would go and tour around all the different companies. Companies are very up for kind of doing that, supporting those outreach efforts and connecting with students who could be their next graduate employees. It's a great way to kind of get a better understanding of the industry side of things and what the opportunities might be.
I think everyone can contribute so much to everyone, like whether you're a student looking for a job in industry, like you're adding to their organization, whoever your employer, they also need like your views and your work and your ideas at their company. So I think it's really important to kind of remember that two-way street there. I also just wanted to mention we're currently in the pilot phase of this project at UKSEDS. It's called Space Projects, but we're looking to connect students with kind of industry. So just people can propose projects, or companies or academics can advertise their projects on space projects. I'm not too aware of exactly what's going on. I haven't really been involved in this project. Hopefully I will get involved in the future. Definitely something to kind of look toward. Opportunities to learn more about what goes on in industry is very important for all students.
Actually, one last thing I wanted to add is UKSEDS conference, which happened this weekend that Christina mentioned. I chaired a panel there about space entrepreneurship, and in one of the calls before, one of the UKSEDS team shared a statistic, and only 6% of the students that had registered to attend, and I believe there was over 2,500 people that registered, said their university had been visited by someone from the space industry. And I think that's such a telling statistic that is so important that maybe we get out there, and that's maybe something with the whole like academic and industry collaboration is something that we can solve as an outcome of that research. I think it would be really interesting to discover how we can do this together.
I'm kind of reminded of what you were all saying earlier about space science being something that seems kind of inaccessible. I would personally love an opportunity to be shown around this complex outside of Oxford or something like that. I would love more opportunities to have a look around the space industry, and I would love for COSS to kind of take up that kind of position on the other side of what you're doing, Anushka. That would be really fantastic. Maybe we could do something with the London Space Network.
I think that's a great idea. We should definitely collaborate with London Space Network. I'm sure that would be cool.
I somehow didn't know about these things, and I'm definitely going to be checking them out soon. Kind of in the same vein, the idea that space happens elsewhere, and space science is this kind of inaccessible thing. A lot of space work seems to happen abroad, and you kind of spoke a little bit about how it happens. It does happen here, and people do have the opportunity to access if people manage to reach out to them. in this way that we're trying to do. Can you kind of speak a little bit more of what you see in the future of UK space projects?
Honestly, like, I just want to see more collaboration, and I'm really disappointed that the UK government haven't yet come up with a strategy, and apparently it's going to be another 6 months, which is really difficult for people like me who are kind of like itching to get our teeth stuck into, like, you know, the strategies where we can align to best serve these missions and goals. So instead, I'm kind of like led doing other things that I'm really passionate about. And actually, one of the things I'm doing is really looking into the ethics and philosophy of space, why we are doing what we're doing, because as I've discovered with the work I'm doing in like technology and deep technology, its application has wider implications, right? And I care so much about representation across all of society, in that anyone who wants to be space tourist in the future should have equal and fair access, as I also said earlier. We're not going to have those conversations when people are designing systems and organizations and ecosystems that close off routes to access in the first instance. And unfortunately, one of the things that I've seen during this pandemic is that each country has had its own like strategy of how to deal with designing and creating a vaccine or having a process and track and trace. And we've kind of lost that like collaboration like globally during the pandemic. And I'm really fearful that this is something that's going to continue as a trend as we go forward. But at the moment, I'm not going to be pessimistic. I'm going to be hopeful, because I think time has yet to tell. And as we're still aligning, there's awesome things happening in partnerships across with NASA in the UK, with the UK signing the Artemis Accord, which is memorandum of understanding, if you will, of how we're going to collaborate together. And there's some great portions of the Artemis program. So that's NASA's mission to take the first woman and the next man to the moon. And I'm hoping it's the next 2 female astronauts, or, you know, women with an X astronauts to the moon. That would be really cool. And there's some really cool ways that we're getting involved with like the communication module and the landing on the moon orbiter. But again, like, that's just me being very siloed and talking about one thing. There are so many opportunities.
Yeah, maybe I can touch a little bit on the UK side of things. Agree with everything that's just said. I think actually we're in a really exciting time for the UK space industry. There's a whole host of things that are going on, and the UK is becoming a great hub for international companies like Astroscale. Our headquarters are in Japan, but we specifically set up shop in the UK because the regulatory environment. We have our mission control centre here in the UK. Our ELSA-D mission that's launching in just a few days' time will be licensed by the UK Space Agency and operated from the UK, which is incredibly exciting. And there's a whole host of things happening up and down the country. So we've got spaceports being set up in Cornwall to Scotland. We've got the Harwell Space Campus. We've got, you know, a whole host of opportunities in London and abroad. I'm afraid I'm going to have to drop off, so this is going to be my last answer, but I will post a link to the Knowledge Transfer Network, who have just set up a map of the UK with all of the space companies included on it. And there's a lot, that's all I'll say. So there's a whole host of ways that you can get involved without necessarily having to go international.
Thank Harriet so much for being on the panel before you had. It's been amazing having you here. And thank you for your insight, which has been very large.
Thank you so much. It's been a real pleasure. I'll post the link and then I'll drop out. But thank you so much for the discussion, Chaneil, and everyone for having me here.
One day we'll be in the London Space Network, drinking wine and talking space again.
So nice to speak with you, Harriet. I also actually wanted to add about something about the UK space sector. I wrote an article a few weeks ago just about what's going on in the UK, and in it I kind of touched on, everyone knows about NASA all around the world. There's so much going on. Of course, like, the US has a significantly larger population than the UK. That doesn't mean that there's nothing going on. I mean, I think each of us here are from kind of different areas in the space sector. It kind of shows that there's a lot going on. If you're kind of looking to get involved in the space sector in the UK, there are so many like different ways to do that. You can be like an engineer, business executive, be involved, like you can be an entrepreneur, you can be all these different kind of things. It's important to note that the space sector, like, of course, the engineering, astronauts, and all that kind of technical stuff is very important, but we also need kind of input from artists. We need artists to kind of inspire the general population. We need people on television kind of speaking about space and getting people excited. We need educators to teach people about the wonders of space exploration, all these amazing things. I said in this article that I wrote, I was like, NASA is in part successful because of the way the media completely was captured with the Apollo missions. All that innovation and excitement around the US space sector really grew from there. And I don't think NASA would be the way it is today if it didn't have the support of the general public. So I think it's really important, even if you're a student, just like getting involved in the space sector, kind of stuck into something you're excited about will just contribute so much. And you're so much more powerful than you think you are. Joining networks, sharing your love of space is like so important. We'll hopefully see the UK space sector continue to grow. I'm very excited.
Honestly, I agree with everything you guys have said. The European Space Agency is now looking for astronauts, going in the right direction. It may seem like people are only speaking about the space industry growing. It actually is. They are also making a parastronaut program where people who do live with disabilities can also apply. The space industry is going in a direction where it's becoming more for everyone. As Christina was actually saying, it's not just engineers and planetary scientists that are needed. If an industry grows, so does the job portfolio. There's going to be administrators, there's going to have to be lawyers, because who's in charge of the sky? Like, there's going to have to be so many different roles, including someone possibly working in like a cafe or the gift store. There's so many different roles in the space industry that if you are interested, there is going to be somewhere for you. I just wanted to add that.
I mean, cafe on the moon. Wouldn't that be such an awesome job?
So cool.
I want that job.
Does anyone else have any questions before we officially wrap up?
I noticed one in the chat. She said we spoke about the lack of women enrolling in engineering. Long-standing issue, doesn't seem to be a quick fix. What are your thoughts on what needs to be done to change this?
Ooh. So I'm not in engineering. Thank you, Christina, for catching that, and thank you for your question. I'm not in engineering, but I am in a field that most consider to be a quote-unquote masculine subject. Being in astrophysics, particle physics and cosmology, the official title. For one, I've noticed that, going back to my question earlier about intersectionality, there's no black students. There's literally no other students other than white people. So that's something that definitely needs to be addressed in the present and also in the future. But when it comes to women being in these roles, it's very much, at least for me, hence why I've started AstroNoir. When you're told from a young age that you're allowed to be in certain places, you're never going to think any differently. As my siblings probably here are going to be so different to me, where I kind of thought that I wasn't allowed to be in these roles, they're going to grow up knowing that their older sister is studying this. It starts from a young age, being able to know that these places are accessible for you. But also leading from that, as you get older, if you decide to change career path, it's something where it has to be made approachable to you. No matter the age, it has to be made approachable. And that's when you'll be able to go to those roles. In order to make it approachable is possibly by having people there to be able to look up to, but also for there to be programs in place for people to go to. At my Earth Sciences department right now for UCL, they're now opening a Women in Earth Sciences. They're also doing an event right now. It's basically showing that there's a seat at the table for you.
As a woman in engineering, definitely is more male dominated. I think Chaneil kind of answered a lot about what needs to be done and challenges that we're facing, but there's no real quick fix. I wish I knew the answer just on how to fix this. I definitely think role models, like Chaneil said, are really important. And if you are a woman in engineering or women in STEM or women anywhere, please share your story, because you never know who you can impact. I think because there might be people from your hometown or people who have worked in a similar industry from you if you're transitioning from somewhere. You never know what impact your story can have. Role models, definitely huge. Also, just getting everyone involved in the conversation. It's really important. I've had such great supportive male friends and colleagues from different positions who are we know there's an issue with women in engineering. We're going to help you if you need any assistance or if there's anything we can do to make your experience more comfortable. I've worked at some plants before where there has in the past been a culture of very male, macho, just this is the way it's always been done, and having women come into the shop, it's a bit of a change for some of the people. I think just opening up the conversation. But if you are male, man, or if you're someone from a majority group, then advocate for people around you. Everyone kind of appreciates if you say like, hey, is there anything I can be doing to like make you more comfortable here, or advocating for people and saying, you know, so-and-so is doing a really great job, and that can really just boost people's confidence and stuff like that. There are little things that everyone can do. I think there's no real and black and white answer. Continually work towards encouraging more people from all different backgrounds into different roles.
So the only thing I would add to that, and I love what you guys have said, is that the course I've been doing during lockdown has been around ethics, technology and engineering. And really, you really shine the light with your question on such an important societal issue. And the thing is we're already seeing this happening in the technology and social media platforms as an example of how society is being engineered out of representation due to algorithmic bias, right? We really need to think about how we're encouraging these talented minds of underrepresented minorities, underserved minorities, and really get them to think about the challenges that we're facing. I cannot tell you how frustrating it is that I've been shadow banned on Instagram because I was talking about the Indian farmers' protest. It's so disappointing to know that me as a woman of colour don't get as much reach because of the colour of my skin, my body type, and all those other things, key examples that have been given. And if we really think about what the fundamental issue is, it's the fact that we have lack of representation at the engineering stage. And the beautiful thing about the course and what I'm learning is that the ethics that an engineer instills in the technology or the product that or the system that they're designing and creating has an ethical implication on how it's going to impact and really have ramifications for all of us in life. We have to think about this language that I'm using of really helping people to understand that if they're not involved in the conversation, if they're not holding the technology platforms to account, then we are, as women and underrepresented people, going to be written out of the future unless we're there to really put our flag in the ground and say that we're here and that the design features that we need for the window portal and the height it has to be, irrespective of microgravity, is going to be at the right height for us if we are going to be on those like space tourism flights to the moon. Just as one potential example, hats off to Christina and your engineering. I'm a big champion of anyone that's building our future, and we are doing it collaboratively. You have an important role to play in that for us all. No pressure.
I think it's very interesting, actually, Anush, that you mentioned the engineering of making sure that it worked. When the all-female spacewalk happened, the suits were incorrect, weren't they?
Too big.
Yeah.
It's shocking. But it's also not. I mean, it is because of the bias in the system that led towards male astronauts being in those positions to do those spacewalks. The fact that those spacesuits were so expensive to build, to send up, to fix, it was just something that as a priority went further down the scale until we got to the point where there was going to be like the female dual spacewalk. We have to catch those things now and use them as reminders as we are developing future systems and products and processes so that we are going to have that visibility that we need. And like you said, Chaneil, the para-astronaut scheme that the European Space Agency is doing is so awesome. I cannot tell you, if you meet the criteria, I urge you to apply. There are grants that you can get that even cover the cost of your medical expenses as part of that program, and there are loads of organizations that are looking to sponsor people. So like, I don't want anyone to go away thinking that they can't access this. There is a way to access it if you really want to, and connect with everyone, connect with the panelists that have been here today, and we'll help you connect those dots.
Yeah, definitely feel free to reach out to any of us. I know everyone's so friendly and wants to help kind of open up the space sector to more people. The grant, I know UK SEDS, we recently launched a grant for potential para-astronauts to cover their medical expenses, so definitely check that out. I can pop the link.
So I was actually going to mention that because I'm on the diversity team for UK SEDS. So we've actually, don't worry, we both are for UK SEDS, so it's fine. But I was just going to mention that it's not just for para-astronauts. We're doing it for all astronaut applications. It's for the health check at the beginning, because all applications need to have some sort of health check. It's about, I think, 200 or 200 something pounds UK SEDS are going to offer for 5 people. If you are wanting to apply to be an astronaut, and it's absolutely possible to apply to be an astronaut, there's nothing stopping you. If you have a master's degree, that's literally, I think that's the maximum they're asking for. So apply. If you don't have the money to pay for the application, go on to the UK SEDS website. Another thing that I think I mentioned earlier, there's never been a black astronaut sent by ESA. There's never been anyone other than white sent by ESA. I think this time they're strongly encouraging all types of people to apply. It doesn't matter who's been up there so far, you can be the next person that goes up.
I have to go in like 2 minutes. So if there's anything else, I've dropped my LinkedIn details. Remember, if you want to connect with me, you got to tell me that we met at this event, even though it was virtual.
I just wanted to say before you leave, just thank everyone so much for coming along. I think that's a fantastic place to end the official event. I'm really glad that last question was asked, because this has been a lot about the practicalities of getting into the industry, but I'm really that aspect of the particular experience of women in the industry is a really great thing to talk about. So thank you so much for coming along.
Awesome.
Thank you so much.
Thank you guys so much.
Thank you, Nush, for coming.
Yeah, thank you. It was nice to speak alongside you.
I see a hand up. Do you have a question before we officially end it?
When I'm older, I want to be a doctor, and I got lots of inspiration of when you were in university. I was going to ask, how do you get through all the hard stuff and the essays and all of that?
I think, honestly, I'm still trying to figure it out. It still is tough sometimes. I do this thing where I like time block my time. I'm involved in so many different things. And just like writing out exactly when I need to do something is really useful. Hot university tip. I wish I discovered time blocking earlier. I like go from 8 to 9, I'm going to be doing this. I always multiply however long I think it's going to be by like 1.5 because I need to give myself some wiggle room. I know I won't get it done in like an hour. It'll be an extra half hour. So that's huge. Also just making sure that you're taking care of yourself. I know in my early university years, I got so bogged down with all my work, and I wasn't like, I'm a huge runner. I love being outside, exploring new places. And ever since I started running again, I'm not saying that like, yeah, because of running, my grades have gone up, but like in a much healthier, happier overall place, fostering that good marks and doing better overall. And then also just relying on your network. Your network is around to lift you up in those times of need. If you're feeling a little bit down, oh gee, I can't do this. This is so difficult. Definitely reach out to your network, because you're definitely not alone there. Everyone's struggling, and they can provide you with some inspiration. And I'm always trying out new methods of studying, but just figuring out what works for you, making sure to take care of yourself. Don't give up. If you're passionate about something, just keep going. You never know what could happen. I never thought I'd be here speaking on this panel, but here I am.
This year is my first year of secondary school. In the summer, I was really excited and I was all organized, and then I came into secondary school, and then after I became really disorganized. It was really hard to do all the work. And then my mum and my sisters told me that it's okay and that you should just work hard. That's why I was asking them.
Yeah, no, that's a brilliant question, and congratulations on entering secondary school. And I wish you all the best. If you ever want to speak about engineering, I know you said you're interested in medicine. I also have some medical doctor friends as well. Then let me know. Always happy to speak to young people about careers in space.
My brother actually wants to be an engineer.
Always need more engineers and more bright minds and hard workers.
But if you're like Harriet and you find the maths hard like me, do what I did and become a space anthropologist like Jiva says.
Actually, space anthropology is very interesting, though. It's going to be needed.
Like what Anushka was saying earlier, these questions of the ethics of space get swept a little bit under the rug, which is why I think places like COSS are really important right now for asking those kinds of questions. Did that answer your question?
Yes, it answered my question.
Amazing. Thank you so much for that question. I think it was really great.
Okay, so I think I'm going to head off as well. We could officially end the conversation.
Thank you so much for sticking around a whole half hour later than we said that we would. It's been absolutely fantastic, and I'll hopefully speak to you sometime soon.
For sure.
Thank you so much for inviting me to speak on this panel. It was really fun and so nice to connect with all of you. Reach out to me if anyone has any questions about anything, or just to chat about space. I mean, we've stayed on here for an extra half hour. I think all of us love talking about space, and I would happily continue for forever. Definitely reach out if you have any questions or want to get more involved in the Women's Space Conference or UK Sense.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you for watching the entire video. We hope it was informative. Again, please subscribe if you like this type of content, and check out our website astronoir.org for regular blog posts and other media. See you next time.